Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gayle Carson. Welcome to Living Regret Free, a program that shows you how to live a better and more joyful life. As an added bonus, I invite you to listen to an introduction to my Mindset Matters program, which ties into this so well. Go to www.sobmindset.com. It's free, and I know you will enjoy it. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter.
Have you ever fantasized about being in Napoleon Hill's shoes as he was gathering the wisdom of the world's leading industrialists for Think and Grow Rich? But doing it today and getting guidance that is not only ageless, but spot on for today's world? Well, Douglas Vermeeren has done just that. He's an internationally renowned speaker, leader, mentor, and filmmaker, and has interviewed 400 of the world's business and motivational leaders to glean the wisdom that creates personal power mastery, the skill of leading a life of achievement and success on every level. He's also the producer and director of 3 out of the top 10 personal development movies ever filmed, and the author of 3 books in the Guerrilla Marketing series, and a regular featured expert on Fox, CNN, ABC, NBC, CTV, and CBC. Currently, his program Personal Power Mastery is rated as number 3 in the world for the most powerful personal development seminars. And now his new book, Personal Power Mastery, will take its place on the list of international bestsellers. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Oh, it's so good to be with you.
Thank you. Do you prefer Doug or Douglas?
Oh, I'm so easygoing. Whatever you like. Doug is great.
Okay, well, I guess the first question we need to ask you is, why did you embark on this journey to interview 400 leaders, and what was that like?
Oh, first of all, it was amazing. The journey to get there was kind of interesting, though. What's kind of crazy about my life is I was raised in a lower middle income family. My father worked in construction. My mom babysat kids at the home. I had never really heard of the personal development industry or Napoleon Hill or any of this stuff. And my parents did a great job raising me, but their idea of working smarter was just putting in more hours. And so I was raised with that mentality. So for me, kind of how this all started is I'd taken a door-to-door sales job in California. And I don't know if anybody in your audience has done door-to-door sales, but you know it's not the easiest kind of gig to get, right? And so while I was doing that, like probably most door-to-door salespeople, I became kind of discouraged. I was about ready to quit. And I had a friend of our family's actually give me the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And for those who haven't read the book, Napoleon Hill basically wrote that book after interviewing people like Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, the Wright brothers, and many other notable people of his day. And when I read it, I thought, my goodness, why not me? Why couldn't I go do something like this? And so I started to embark on an adventure, which I did not expect it would take me to where it did, but I really just wanted to meet some of these top achievers in our day. And that's kind of really how I got started, sort of, I guess, by accident.
Well, that's interesting, but you also said something very important there, and that is, why not me? So many people say, why me? And you're saying, why not me? And that, of course, leads to a greater amount of accomplishment. So what is personal power mastery? What is that all about?
Well, personal power mastery, I guess the best way to explain it is really a compilation of what I call the patterns of successful people. Here's the deal. I had someone recently attend one of our personal power mastery trainings that pointed out something interesting. And he was a lawyer. That was his occupation. He said, if I had one witness on the witness stand who, could say, this is the fact, this is the truth, that's pretty good. The judge would really take notice of that. If I had 3 people, that would be amazing. If I had a dozen, it would be indisputable evidence. He said, you have the information on success by more than 400 of the world's top achievers. And so personal power mastery really unfolds those, how should we say, predictable strategies and patterns that anyone can do to create success in any area of their life. And that's really what the book is about.
So what was the most important lesson that you got from the book?
Well, I think probably the foundational lesson that most people really have a struggle with, especially in today's society, that title, even personal power mastery, is chosen intentionally. And the very first word is there for a reason, and that's personal. We notice that most people, one of the biggest reasons why they have a challenge creating success in their life is they're not prepared to take it personally. In other words, they blame the economy. They blame, someone that they're having a relationship with. They blame their upbringing. They blame the family they came from. They blame all kinds of other activities that they have, and they don't take personal accountability and responsibility for themselves. So there's a saying that we have in the training, the Personal Power Mastery seminars that we do, that if you want to change something, if you want something to be different than it currently is, the saying is this: if you own it, you can change it. And so I think that that's the fundamental truth that we begin with. And naturally, there's, several strategies and, tools that we can add to that. But until you take something personally and decide that you're really going to make the change, no other strategy actually will have any power in your life.
That, it is true. There's a lot of people that blame a lot of other people or other situations for what they're experiencing at the time. And like it or not, we have to take responsibility. I mean, in the end, we're the only one who control ourselves. I mean, people can do things to us and circumstances can happen, but we're the only one that can decide how we're going to react to it. I always think of that when I'm at the airport and planes are delayed or canceled or whatever, as I'm running from gate to gate, and I'm thinking, okay, this is the way it is, and if I don't want to travel, then I shouldn't be doing what I do. But I would think it would be hard to select out of 400 people your favorite interview, but I know that you have one.
Oh, I would say that it's actually kind of close to impossible. But here's the thing that's really interesting about meeting these top achievers. Some of them, to be quite frank, were just interviews, people that we met and didn't get a chance because of either their schedule or what was going on to spend a lot of time with them. But there were many, and really a lot, that have become close personal friends. And people, in fact, that have continued relationships with me even up until now. In fact, it's funny, I was just talking to Brian Smith this morning, the founder of UGG Boots. And so he's become quite a good friend of mine. Another that's become a really good friend, but he just recently passed away, was Frank McGuire, who's one of the co-founders of Federal Express, the former VP of marketing for all of KFC, American Airlines. He was 8 in the White House under Lyndon B. Johnson and JFK. And he was like a grandpa to me. He used to come over to our house at Thanksgiving, play our piano, and then after eating dinner, he'd fall asleep on our couch. So these were people that became an intimate part of my life, and many of them still are. So it's kind of like, I don't know, when people ask me that question, who's your favorite interview, in some ways it almost feels like saying, who's your favorite brother or sister, right?
Right.
It's just,
right.
They're important to me for different reasons, and there's been lessons that have been amazing for different reasons. In fact, just thinking back of Frank McGuire, here's one of my favorite lessons that he taught me, is we were one time standing out front of a hotel while the young man was loading our luggage into a vehicle, and at the end, Frank gave him a $5 tip. But instead of just giving it to him in his hand, he held on to it. And he asked the young man, he said, what's that I just gave you? And the young man says, well, $5. And Frank said to him, well, what's that worth? And the young man, he doesn't know what's happening here. So he says, $5. And Frank says, no, it all depends on what you do with it next. And it was little moments like that that were maybe not as formal as like an interview setting that made me really kind of go, that's interesting to think about. That's a really interesting concept. And I think that that's the same with not just money in our life, but every opportunity, everything that comes along, the people that we meet, the experiences that we have. What is it really worth to you? It really depends on what you're going to do with it next.
Well, that's true. That's so true. But it's also interesting how we don't always recognize the effect that our words have on things that we just throw off the cuff, they just may be something that is very endearing to somebody else, or maybe even put off, Yeah. But I understand that this book was decades in the making, and I'm just wondering why.
Well, I think the thing that I wanted to do with this book, I wanted to have a personal development book that I thought was different than everything else that was in the marketplace today. So there were a few things that I needed. Number one, I needed to make sure that what I was sharing was practical, that it was results driven. Now, obviously, we always talk about the 400 interviews that I did with the top achievers, But it's rarely talked about the fact that I've been teaching this to several thousand people around the world for the last decade and a half. And as I've been teaching it, and we share some of those experiences in the book, I've had people that have come through that have been through foreclosures, bankruptcies, terminal illness, divorce. They've lost family members. They've lost children. Some pretty challenging things. But I've also, through the course of time, been able to see that the stuff that we teach works. And it doesn't only fix those negative situations, but it makes people better than they've ever been before. And it's a very predictable pattern that someone can follow once they really understand what it is. You see, there's two ways, or two elements, I guess we should say, to create success in anyone's life. The first one we talked about, firstly, it's making it personal. I call it also willingness. So willingness. If you're not willing, it doesn't matter what strategies that we add to the mix. But the second part of that is a successful strategy. I believe that anyone, if they've got a willingness and the right strategies behind them, can do anything. You see, I kind of disagree with the idea that if you believe it, you can achieve it. Because I think there's a lot of kids, even if we watch American Idol, lots of people who think they're the next American Idol and they believe there's the next best thing, but they just don't have the strategies or the skills yet. So willingness is part of the equation. The strategies and the skills are the other. And I guess to answer the question, we just want to make sure that we were bringing the very best strategies to the world. In fact, it's interesting, Joe Vitale in the book, who is a featured teacher from The Secret, he feels this is going to be a classic in personal development. And to me, I'm blown away. I mean, that's the goal that I had. But that means that this book is destined to be up there right with Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I mean, it's that kind of a book. So that's why we took our time with it. We wanted to make sure we had something powerful.
Wow. Well, I know that you probably got some kind of an aha out of all of this. What was your biggest aha?
Wow. Well, there were so many ahas. And naturally, coming from, like I said, as a background as a young 20-year-old kid that had never really experienced personal development, this whole journey has been an aha. But, I think probably the one that blew me away the most, it was one of the interviews that I did. It wasn't with a top achiever. It was actually after I'd completed the interviews with the top achievers. I was looking for some other supplemental information to add to my training for this. And so I wanted to study people who facilitated change. So I decided it's time to step outside of, the personal development space and leadership space. Let's look at some occupations or individuals that deal in change that you wouldn't normally think about, right? And so as I started thinking about who are people who do this, I started thinking that probably the person that you need to talk to is the people on the suicide hotline. If you think about it, when somebody calls in and they're distraught and they're in despair and they feel like there's no other options, they really need someone who can help them have a change of mind really quickly, right? And in fact, when I was talking with the lady who trains the suicide operators, one of the ladies who trains them across the United States, she was saying that this is a really dire and desperate situation. Sometimes when people call in, they've either got a gun in their hand already or they've got a definite plan of what they're going to do. Sometimes they've even taken pills and they need to give you permission to get the police there or whatever because you don't know where they're calling from, right? So I thought that would be interesting. What would they have to say about facilitating change? And as I was talking to this lady, she said, out of all the things that we're able to tell them, the one thing we cannot say is don't kill yourself. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, that's the first thing I would say, right? And she says, well, the reason people feel distraught and in despair and that there's no hope and they feel cornered into this choice of suicide is because they feel like all their other choices have been taken away. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. What? And she says, yes. So what we do is we tell them they have a choice. Yes, you could take your life. Here's what the consequences would look like. Or you could stay, and here's what those consequences look like. Or you could get help, and here's what that looks like because you're doing that now. And they would help them regain their choices. Now, as I've looked more into this idea of choice, it's become evident that as people feel powerless, like I said, people who come maybe to our events who've been through foreclosure, death, bankruptcy, divorce, whatever it is, the moment people feel like they are regaining power over their ability to choose, like their choices grow, they gain more power back. And it's interesting because I'm not saying they've got to take all the choices that they may consider, but just knowing they have the options of choice expands their ability to take new and profound action. And for me, that was a big aha because there are very few books. In fact, I don't even think I've seen a personal development book yet that talks about the foundational principle of success is recognizing you've got multiple choices. Most people don't think that. And I think that that's the way most people live their life as well. That's why they do what they do every day at a job, and they don't recognize they've got different choices. They could do something different.
So in doing all of this research, I mean, how long did it take you to interview 400 leaders?
Well, it's actually close to about 10 years. But here's the interesting thing is, like I said, I'm still actually interviewing people even now. So to get to about the first 400, I think we did 427 or something like that in the first 10 years. But here's the cool thing about this all is actually I started noticing changes in my life immediately. I didn't even have to get to the 400 till I started seeing changes. Like, for example, my financial situation, I was broke. I was in debt. I was a student with massive student loans. I was carrying credit card debt. I had a car payment. I had all kinds of things, and I wasn't making any money. But in the first 6 months of starting these interviews, I did $1.6 million. And as a 19-year-old, that's about $9,000 a day. That's absolutely incredible. And so I know that this stuff works.
Well, I was going to ask you what your most surprising finding from doing this research was, but I think you just told us. So how did...
Yeah, I was definitely one of them.
So what changed? I mean, that is a big jump from being really in debt to doing 1.9 million. So what did you do that changed?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that changed was a belief in myself, right? I really don't think that I had the self-worth that I deserved, or the self-confidence, or the feeling that I could do it. Just kind of like what we said earlier, this idea of why me. I kind of believe that, but I kind of didn't. Not until I had, again, some of the world's top achievers. I'm talking millionaires and billionaires that would give me 15 or 20 minutes of their time, and later it turned into a friendship that's lasted over a lifetime. Like, I didn't believe at that point that those kind of people would really be interested to be part of my life, let alone mentors, right? And then with that belief, as I started to kind of expand, I began to really see that there were things that I could do, strategies that I could implement. In fact, it's kind of funny. One of the things I had to do, and this is maybe a big aha for me too, I had to let go of my ego in some circumstances. And I think ego is really a true reason why some people are going to stay poor their whole life. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about poor relationships, poor health, poor everything. But ego, I'll never forget, I was sitting with a multi-billionaire, and I had an idea for a company or a business, and I took it to him. And this was early in the stages, right? So I was still about, maybe 20 at the time. And I said to him, what do you think of my business idea? And he started showing all the things that, maybe I should consider and things that could be improved. And, he showed a couple of good ideas that I had, but he mostly showed me where I was kind of missing it from being a big company. Well, what I started to do is start to argue for what I thought was the right thing, right? And he stopped me about partway, and he said, you know what, Doug, you can be right or you can be rich. You can't be both. And the problem with being right, he said, is that you get to keep everything that you've got, right? Nothing will change. If you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always gotten. But if you'd like to be rich, that means you've also got to be teachable. And you've got to understand that the best answers often come from people around you, not within yourself. And to me, that was a big aha as well, because I recognize the difference between stupidity and tenacity. Stupidity is the guy who wants to get into the next room beside him, but he'll bang his head on the wall in the same spot. And whoever comes and tells him there's a door on the other end, he'll tell him to go away. I'm just going to bang my head here. But a tenacious person knows that in order to get to the other room, he's going to try many, many options. A tenacious person is teachable. And that's one of the big lessons that I learned in the beginning is, you got to just keep trying different things and getting advice from better and better people until you discover the answer. There are solutions for everything. Problems are like puzzles. There's always a solution.
Absolutely. And then you also have the ability to see what other organizations are doing and see how you can adapt what they're doing either on a lesser scale or same scale or more scale for yourself. Yeah. But you also
Absolutely.
do this with a live event. So how does the book differ from the live event?
Well, I really enjoy the live events. I mean, I loved writing the book too, and the book has tons of value. But one of the things I love about the live event is that you never know kind of the problems that are going to show up, but we definitely have some solutions for everyone. So I've had people come through that we've been able to really even change their life in a weekend. In fact, I'm thinking of one in particular that was a single mom that came from a situation where she was beaten and abused as, this spouse. She went into a women's shelter, and her own father ratted her out to this young man. because he felt that they needed to make it work. Well, in the end, she needed to change her name, leave her own city, and on a Greyhound bus, she journeyed to Las Vegas with her daughter for a promised job that never materialized, and so they were essentially homeless. Well, we ran into this girl and began to talk to her about the principles of personal power mastery, and during that weekend, she had an experience that just changed her life, and now she's a real estate investor. She was telling me in a recent email a couple of months ago that she's got about $125,000 liquid cash in her bank account and has about 30 properties that she rents out on a regular basis, and for the rest of the time she volunteers at her daughter's school. When I hear a story like that, it's like, this is why we do this. And so the live events, one of the other things I love about them is, we can spend as much time working through specific issues as we'd like, whereas in a book, we can't always get into the detail that we'd like to. We can't always become the support that I want to be to the people that are there. Obviously, the book is a great beginning point, but it's just kind of like when you watch a movie. Sometimes people prefer the book, sometimes people prefer the movie. But I'm telling you, if you get both, then you've really got an experience that can help you really go deep into that material, right? So I love the live event.
So who would you say the book is for, and how are people using it?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've seen a wide variety of people come through our trainings. In fact, I know this is going to sound crazy, but our youngest student that we've actually worked with on this program is 7 years old, and now they're a published author. So we have some even youth that come to the program, a lot of students as well. But the oldest person that I've had come through is probably the one that startles me the most. It's an 87-year-old lady named Ingrid. She's absolutely amazing, on fire, and she just started dating again at 87. I was like, what's going on?
Wow,
but
there's hope for me yet. See that?
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, what a powerful thing to help people understand the brilliance and the power they have within them, right? At any age. And so, like, we have business owners that have come through. We've had family members. I've had people who've, wanted to make massive life changes come through. In fact, I'm thinking recently of a lady that was gifted the course. She had lost her husband in combat action a few years ago, and she had really gone into a massive depression. Someone gifted her the ability to become a personal power mastery, and now she's out there actually speaking to other women who've been through the same thing, and she's empowering them. So I mean, we use the tools from the top achievers to flick on that light switch to help people find the very best of who they want to be. And it's not just a business course, it's not just a personal course, because here's the idea. With anything in life, you need to expand who you are before you can expand what you have. And when you expand who you are, everything that you want shows up in a bigger way. Let me put it this way. The universe is an echo chamber. And if you show up with hesitation or with doubt or with fear or any of these things, scarcity, etc., that's how the rest of your world is going to show up. But if you learn how to show up with power, and if you learn the strategies that the top achievers use, it's like the law of the harvest. The seeds that you plant are what's going to show up. And through the 400 interviews that we did with the world's top achievers, I can show you how to plant those seeds with confidence, and I can show you how to reap those rewards in a faster time than you've ever experienced before.
Well, I think that's amazing. From age 70 to 80, from age 7 to 87, I think that's phenomenal. Well, Doug, let me ask you a question.
Oh, that's a coincidence too.
Yeah,
I never thought of it that way. That's actually
you got an 80-year span there.
That's so
funny. Where can people get a hold of your book? Where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, the best place to get the book is probably on Amazon. And I'd like to actually just suggest, if you'd like to get a hold of us or experience some more of these materials, we'd like you to come try it out for free. And so you can head on to Facebook. We've got a group there that's called Personal Power Mastery. And, we share videos and articles and strategies from, the book and the seminars and the interviews with the top achievers all the time. I sometimes even bring some of the top achievers on. So you get to hear directly from them. And we do run a podcast. And then we also have something on a brand new social media site called Zoom Linker, where we are going to put a whole pile of new stuff there too, also for free. And it's going to be an exclusive in each case, right? So you're not getting the same material in each spot. We'll give different material in each. So please come and join us. It's a great place to find it for free. And as we said, you can get the book on Amazon even right now.
Wow. So they can actually go to Facebook and go to Personal Power Mastery, correct? And join a group and see what you're all about. And then look for the book on Amazon. And wow, that's fabulous. Well, I think this would be a super thing for anybody to research and look at, because even if they're not, even if they're not business people, it's going to help them in life. That's what this show is all about. It's about living regret free. And this is what will allow people to live regret free if they learn how to master their personal power, if they look and see and listen to these interviews that you did. I mean, this is a powerful, powerful methodology for people to become more self-sufficient and grasp their own lives back, which is very, very important. Well, Doug,
well, I love what you're saying, and maybe in the future we'll come back on and we'll talk about regret, because we've also discovered where regret comes from and how to overcome it through the 5 ways that your brain actually learns and processes information. That's a fascinating subject. So
wow.
I'm excited that you mentioned that. So who knows, maybe we'll have to come back and visit you in the future.
Sounds good to me. Well,
cool.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Doug. We have really enjoyed it. Go to Facebook.com, go to Personal Power Mastery, see what Doug is all about. My guest has been Doug Vermeeren, and thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been good to be with you today.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I choose my guests carefully, so if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com. In the meantime, check out my intro program, Mindset Matters, at www.sobmindset.com. See you next week.